and welcome back to our annual Cup of Excellence competition, where the relay race is already underway.
That's right, Johnny. Looks like our teams are about to pass those batons. Team LYC and Team Opportunist, they're neck and neck. And Team Shortcut, they're lagging behind.
Right you are, Chet. And with this handoff, Team Launch Your Classroom is pulling even further ahead. It looks like they're going to win this one.
But wait, what is Team Shortcut doing?
They're throwing the baton.
Oh, my Team Shortcut is gonna cross the line first. The referee is calling them as the winner of this event.
And the other teams don't look happy about it, not one bit. But let's check in with the referee to see if indeed this is against the rules.
Man, the referee is going to allow it because there's no rule book?
What a shame. What a shame.
Welcome to Launch Your Classroom. I'm Kyle Pope. Today, I want you to take a second to imagine if your workplace had no rules. Teachers and students didn't have to be in their classrooms when the bell rang, tests were completely optional, and grades would never need to be entered. Do you believe any real learning would take place in that type of environment? Absolutely not. A lack of structure leads to chaos. In fact, it's a primary cause for a poorly managed classroom. Whether they admit it or not, most students want structure and they will look to you to provide it. So you must make sure to establish clear boundaries and have a plan to react when those boundaries are crossed. Today on Launch Your Classroom, we are going to be discussing an essential foundation for classroom structure, creating effective rules and consequences. The key word there is effective. So let's get right into it by taking a look at how to create a good set of classroom rules.
My students have been so wild lately. Time to write some classroom rules. How hard could it be?
Hey, Coach, what you doing there?
Oh, hey Tara. I've been working on my class rules.
Rules are definitely essential to a well-run classroom. You mind if I take a look?
Go for it.
It's some good ideas. It's a start.
A start? I thought I was almost finished. Would you mind helping me out? I know you have good rules in your class.
Aw, thanks, Coach. I'd be happy to help. Let's take a look at this first one.
No talking. My students talk way too much. I need that one.
Yes, but it's best to remain positive when designing your rules. That way, you're telling students exactly what you want them to do. And no talking makes me think that your students are never supposed to talk. Is that true?
Well, no. They can talk sometimes. I just want them to stop blurting things out.
Okay, so let's change it to raise your hand before speaking.
Oh, that's good. How about the next one?
Whew. That's a little long. Rules are best when they're concise and precise.
But they need to treat everyone with respect at all times.
Hey, treat everyone with respect at all times? That's a great rule. That's a much better way to put it.
That does look better. Let's look at the last one.
This is a little confusing. We need to make sure that our rules make sense. After all, you are a teacher, and it's your responsibility to help students in need.
That's true. What if I split this one into two rules? The first would be listen and follow directions.
I like it.
And ask for help when you need it.
Wow, now this is a great set of rules. And you even followed one important guideline without even trying to. Keep your rules few in number, preferably less than 5.
I've learned so much today. Rules should be positive, concise, precise, make sense, and be kept to 5 or less.
You've done such a great job today, Coach. And you've displayed your rules where all of your students can see them.
Thanks for all your help, Tara.
At times, students can see rules as a bit one-sided. You created them, you displayed them, You taught them, and you make sure they're followed. Students who don't completely buy into your rules may be a bit slower adhering to them. So as you begin the rule-making process, you should consider working with your students to create class rules. This will give them a sense of ownership that will lead to student buy-in. So how does it work? First, tell your students that you want to involve them in a very important job. You want them to help you make a fair set of rules. Let them know that you want your class to reflect positive values and promote a productive learning environment. With that in mind, give them a few seconds to think of ideas, then open up the discussion. Next, write down their ideas at the front of the classroom for everyone to see. You may get some intentionally silly answers like no classwork. That's to be expected, but remind the students what type of rules you want. In this case, no classwork doesn't promote a productive learning environment. After you've gathered several ideas, it's likely that many of them will convey the same message. Help the students combine these into a single good rule. Say you end up with no hitting, don't throw pencils, and no kicking the back of the desk. That can become keep hands, feet, and objects to yourself. If you find that the students are missing a rule that is a must-have, then feel free to offer suggestions and guide the students to help them create that rule. Once you have about 5 good rules, then the activity is complete. Your students now have a vested interest in following the rules. After all, they helped create them.
Thank you for joining us. After the controversial decision on the last event, the referees will now be using a rule book.
And thank goodness for that, Chet, because our next event is already underway, the trivia competition.
What is the capital of Jamaica?
Kingston.
That is correct. Final question. Who wrote the novel A Farewell to Arms?
Ernest Hemingway.
That is correct. But unfortunately, you cheated by writing the names on your arm.
But what does that mean? Did we win or not?
Well, let me consult the rule book. The rule is clearly stated, but there are no consequences. Win to Team Opportunist.
Right. Yeah! We won. I'm so excited.
Another controversial decision. Without consequences, breaking the rules is becoming contagious for our teams.
What a shame. What a shame.
Wouldn't it be nice if students automatically followed our classroom rules? Unfortunately, that isn't the case. Your rules will be broken, and you're going to need to decide what to do when that occurs. It's time to discuss negative consequences. Although it's excellent to use logical consequences, for example, a student is talking to their neighbor, so you change their seat, you will also need a list of established class-wide consequences to use when a logical consequence does not apply. Often, your school will have some options for negative consequences, such as a timeout area or a lunch detention. It's a good idea to check with them when planning out your consequences. Let's go over an example of a negative consequences list. 1. A verbal warning, a very simple recognition of the behavior and redirection back to the lesson. 2. A written warning. This is something you would hand directly to the student. It would note the rule being violated along with a reminder of the next consequence should the behavior continue. 3. Contact parent via email or phone. This is when you begin to partner with the parent. Let them know what's happening and see if you can work together for a solution. Make it clear that you care about their student and want to help them learn. 4. Parent, student, and teacher conference with a school counselor or administrator present. Continue to work with the parent and other important personnel on a larger solution to the behaviors. Consider using a behavioral contract. 5. Office referral. Very last resort, but reasonable should the other consequences prove ineffective. Once you have created your consequences, you'll want to explain them in detail to your students. Having a set of consequences in place helps take the emotion out of a potentially tense situation. You're following an established system, so you aren't reacting with haste. And the student knew the consequences prior to their actions, so there should be no surprise. Keep in mind, in order for consequences to be effective, you'll need to use them. If you aren't consistent with enforcing the rules, then students won't be consistent with following them. However, if you are fair and firm, students will be less likely to misbehave because they know for certain that they'll receive a consequence.
Now that you have created rules and consequences for your class, it's time to put them into action. A behavior log is a tool to help you record, describe, and follow up with negative student behaviors so you can easily communicate the behaviors and consequences to administrators and parents. Your behavior log can be on paper or digital. It should have 4 columns: student name, date of negative behavior, rule violated, and comments. The comments column is where you discuss the consequence you enforced and any further action by the student. A behavior log will benefit you and your classroom culture if it is accurate, consistent, and clear. An accurate behavior log is objective. It is based only on facts, describing the rule violation itself, not your feelings about the event. Reporting events fairly and factually shows parents, administrators, and the student that you are trustworthy. If you exaggerate, leave out important details, or lie in your behavior log, you are opening the door to further negative behavior from a student who sees you as unfair. Keep your behavior log consistent by reporting each time the student violates a rule and receives a consequence. You want to be able to deliver at a moment's notice the most recent report of the student's behavior. When parents can see exactly how many times a student has broken a rule, as well as the related consequences, they understand that you have given the student multiple chances and are still seeking positive outcomes. Finally, a behavior log needs to be clear in order to be useful. It is your tool to help others understand the negative student behaviors and your responses. The language of your student log should be so easy to interpret that it could be communicated by others if you were not present. It should also be worded clearly enough that you can refer to it with confidence and when speaking with parents and administrators. Remember, a behavior log is confidential. Nobody should have access to the log except you, your administrators, and the parents or guardians involved in a meeting. Under no circumstances should a student's behavior log be shared with other students in the class. Once you discuss the results of your log, you will team up with the student to create a behavior contract. This is a document that specifies the negative behavior that needs improvement and what steps the student will take to change that behavior. The success of a behavior contract depends on the rapport you have built with your student and how much ownership your student takes of the actions that need improvement.
Good rules and fair consequences are fundamental pieces of classroom management. Remember to maintain transparency by explaining your rules and consequences and displaying them in your classroom. Then, most importantly, be consistent. If you don't yet have rules and consequences, it's time to create them. And if you do already have rules and consequences, then look them over and make sure they're appropriate for your students. Either way, I bet you'll create a stable classroom ripe for learning in no time. This month on Launch Your Classroom, we're going to keep talking about this important topic. We'll work on honing our creative skills by playing a game show called Good Rule, Bad Rule. Then we're going to do an expert interview on how to adapt when your rules and consequences aren't working. We'll also have a really exciting segment devoted to meal planning as a teacher. So be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to get all of our upcoming professional development content. Thank you, and I hope you'll join us for the Q&A.
Whoa, welcome back. We are midway through the last round of the Cup of Excellence Championship, arm wrestling. We've just witnessed Team Launch Your Classroom eliminate Team Opportunist.
I don't know if Team LYC can beat Team Shortcut, though. They've been playing fair this entire time, and so far it hasn't worked. Disorder and cheating have impacted this once noble competition. And so it comes down to this: a duel among titans. Winner takes all.
Team Launcher Classroom has taken a gigantic lead.
Team Shortcut has won by using both hands.
Hold on, Johnny. What is this? The referee now has both rules and consequences. The ref is enforcing the consequences and has disqualified Team Shortcut.
This means that Team Launcher Classroom are the winners of this year's Cup of Excellence competition. What a game! What a game! All right, thanks for watching and for the great questions we've been getting in the chat and through our professional development channels. We're going to answer as many of these as we can today. Just remember, it's not too late to submit a question for our Q&A. If you've got any questions about classroom rules and consequences, put them in the chat and we will answer them live. Joining us today for the Q&A is, as always, the host of Launcher Classroom Live, Kyle Pope. Kyle, congratulations on winning the Cup of Excellence this year.
Oh, thank you, Johnny. I owe if I can talk today, I owe a lot of it to my teammate.
Yeah, and she's joining us today as well, Rachel Durant. Rachel, congratulations to you.
Thanks, Johnny. It was great to be there then, and it's great to be here now.
All right, well, let's take a look at our first question. Coming in from Benedict, should I post consequences at the front of the room along with my rules? Kyle, what do you think?
Hey, Benedict, thank you for this question. Yeah, I've spoke with teachers before who are hesitant to put up consequences at the front of the room for fear that it might impact rapport or something like that. But I think it promotes fairness and therefore can help the student-teacher relationship. You know, if you put your consequences up alongside your rules and in front of your class, it's very clear cause and effect for your students. If you break this rule, then this will happen. So being consistent with your rules and consequences will reinforce what you displayed in front of your class, and the students will quickly learn what will happen, and it'll be a quick reference for you should you get a bit frustrated in the moment like we all can. So yeah, go ahead and display those consequences. Thank you.
All right. Rachel, I got this question earlier in the week from Namono. I want to change my rules, but would that make me seem inconsistent or lead to confusion for the students? What do you think?
That's a really good question, Namono. You know, we're at this point in the year where we might be thinking about behaviors in our class and how they're changing, and so maybe our rules should be changing too. Classroom culture evolves, and so should your rules. But the big piece to this is that you need to communicate those changes very clearly. So the moment you decide that you are going to change a procedure or change a consequence, you need to let the whole class know, and you're going to want to go over it many times. You want to model it and rehearse it, and then that way you are still perceived as being fair. Nobody likes to have a surprise rule and consequence sprung on them. So the piece for keeping a good classroom rapport is to make sure that everybody understands your changes in policy. Thanks so much for the question.
Okay, I've got another one here from Marcia. Kyle, Marcia asks, cell phones have become a big problem in my class. Any suggestions on a good rule to manage this issue? Any experience with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Marcia, thank you for this. I too have followed in the great cell phone wars. I would say, you know, if you're going to come up with a rule for that, I would say something like keep materials unrelated to the lesson stored in your book bag or your cubby if you teach you know, elementary school or something of that nature. You don't want to say no cell phones because of the negative wording, but also because you can certainly use cell phones as an engaging device when they're used appropriately, like with QR codes or you know, creating voice memos or something like that. Beyond the rule itself, there are definitely some other management techniques available, and we actually have some of those in one of our previous episodes, if you want to check that out, called Managing Student Devices in the Classroom. So a lot of good content in there. Thank you so much for your question.
Okay, and I've got another question here, this one from Elias. I'm second guessing a weak consequence that I gave a couple days ago. Is it okay to switch to a tougher one? What do we think?
That is an excellent question. You know, there's the problem of double jeopardy, and I think that's one thing that we need to bear in mind here. But I know what you mean. I know what it's like to react to something, give a consequence, and then just be up half the night thinking that I should have had a stronger consequence because it seemed pretty severe, and I didn't want to take a weak position on something or have it happen again in my class. But I think we need to consider the fact that if you give a consequence and then if you make the consequence worse for the same problem, that's really going to make you the bad guy in this situation. One thing you could do is pull that student aside the next day and say, be honest with them and say, you know what, I gave you a consequence for what you did yesterday, but it was really awful, and I really hope I never see that behavior again, because what I think would be a better consequence would be this. Go ahead and tell them so that they know that what they've done is perhaps more wrong than what you conveyed with your consequence, so that hopefully that'll be an extra reminder that they shouldn't engage in that behavior again. Thank you, Elias.
Oh, well, thank you, Rachel. Kyle, got a question here from Yana. I have a student who got really upset when given a consequence. How can I make sure that I don't damage the student-teacher relationship?
Thank you, Yana. No one likes getting consequences, including the students, and the fact that you recognize that your student got upset shows that you care. So congrats on being aware and concerned about your relationship with that student. I think the best thing that you can do is take some time to speak with that student after they've calmed down a little bit and stopped being so upset, reaffirm what you appreciate about them and what they contribute to your class, and then make it a point to say that the consequences are tied to behavior. And although you really like them, you have to treat them fairly, exactly as every same student when they break a rule. Ask them if there's anything they can do, that you can do to help them prevent it from happening again. And then over the next few days, make it real public, your praise of them in front of other students. Talk about everything that they're doing well to kind of help reestablish that relationship. Thank you so much for your question.
Rachel, this just came in from Aisha. I've heard of other teachers who allow their students to choose a consequence. What do you think of this practice?
Hey there, Aisha. It's the old choose your consequence game. I have some really mixed feelings about this one, and I think what it comes down to is your intention and your purpose in having them do that. If you really are trying to inspire reflection for your student and ownership of what they've done, if you're hoping to kind of move them forward in a constructive way, I think that's awesome. You can say, you know what, you've done something wrong, and I think we need to talk about it after class because it's kind of upsetting, and we need to talk about a consequence, and then have them help determine what it is. That's fair, and it's definitely going to inspire accountability. Now, if you're using it as a guilt trip, right, or if you're actually kind of manipulating with it, if that's really where you're going with this, that's just an abuse of power. It kind of reminds me of the grandmother neighbor who had people pick their own switch. I don't know if that's something that, but the idea that you have to choose your own consequences can be really startling. So it just kind of comes back to what you're trying to do and how strong a relationship you have with the student from the get-go. It could be really enriching, they could learn something about themselves and do better, or it could just be a terrible idea. You know your students best and what your intentions are. Thank you for the question, Aisha.
Okay, and I've got a question here from Sai for Kyle. Why can't I just send a student out of the class when they misbehave? We've heard questions like this before, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Sai. It is very tempting to send a student out because it seems like an immediate solution, right? But it's also a temporary solution that can ultimately lead to more problems. A big one is that the student will stop seeing you as the authority in the classroom and see only the principal as the authority or whoever you're sending them to. So you'll end up having to send them out time and time again, and they're not going to be learning because they're not in your class, and you'll have damaged your relationship with them severely. So it's much better to have a good set of in-class consequences, especially for those minor misbehaviors, as annoying as they can be. But when you get into some more major issues and that type of thing, start involving the student and other important stakeholders like their parents, administrators, guidance counselors, those types of things, and start coming up with behavioral agreements and long-term solutions that the student can be involved in to help keep them in your class and keep them learning. So thank you so much for that question, Si.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, everyone, that's all the questions we have time for today. Launch Your Classroom Live will return on November 1st with a brand new episode, Active Learning Strategies. But that's not all. LYC will be releasing new content every Friday. So check back on October 11th for a fun look at classroom rules, or on October 18th for another installment of our Ask an Educator interview series. And once again on October 25th for some wellness tips on meal planning as a teacher. And today, Friday, October the 4th only, the entire Launch Your Classroom series is available to download for free on Amazon.com. And remember, to stay up to date on all the free professional development that EPI offers, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and while you're at it, click the bell icon to receive notifications when we're live. From all of us here at Launch Your Classroom, have a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next time.